Two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Bull Rush. I am Schmugledorf, joined, as always, by Wolfman, and welcoming back Mr. Noirbot from his 1 week hiatus.
Yes, indeed.
How are we doing today?
Hiatus.
Hiatus.
Yeah, due to Austin traffic, I had to bull rush all my way home.
Yeah! Yeah! Oh, man, that's great.
I may be late, but at least I have good puns.
Of course. You have to have good puns. I mean, it's not worth it if you don't have good puns. Oh, yes, I do have the best hair. I do, I really do. You can tell. I actually spent a considerable amount of time getting good hair, too, by the way.
I literally, the reason I'm late is I was getting my hair cut and it took longer than expected. Like, that's the irony of it, too.
Are you
Yes.
serious right now?
God damn it, man!
I was like, I'm already committed. I've waited to, get my hair cut. They're like, kept taking a while. Like,
It's
what?
gonna
You're
be
not
a
gonna,
little while. I'm sorry.
You're not gonna, get up in the middle of getting your hair cut and be like, I have to leave now.
I have to leave, man. I'm sorry. Half of my hair looks shitty, but okay, whatever. I have to leave now. You're not getting paid either, just hope you know. No. Oh, man.
Oh, the
Anyway.
irony.
Anyway.
Got things to discuss.
We do have things to discuss. Oh, man, a little couple of things we're going to be discussing today. There was the gigantic roundtable discussion that happened this week. They do this every week, apparently, now. And they talked about some ranged heroes, viability of ranged heroes. They got a little bit into Taito and Uncle Sven and Wu. Zenobia a little bit. They talked about Mozu and Gnosis. Just a lot of really cool balance things, and we're going to kind of go into our thoughts on those. In addition to that, we get to talk about the behind the scenes at Motiga post up on the forums, showing some things that they're kind of working on maybe for the next patch for the beta, so we get to go ahead and talk about that. We're kind of hoping and looking for on those. And then, of course, since we didn't talk about it last week, since we were busy being salty, this week we get to talk about the Beckett leak, the data mining of Beckett, new hero for Gigantic. Let's go ahead and get into this. We'll start with the roundtable because that's going to be the things that we can kind of talk a little bit more about rather than saying, oh, well, this may or may not ever happen sort of a deal. So let's go. Let's start about this. They're talking about ranged viability on Canyon.
I didn't read as much as last week's, but
Well, actually, first off, can I just mention, it is really cool that they're doing this.
Oh, yeah.
From a general, just the way this game is working, I'm really happy that we're now seeing, now that we're in beta, that there are dedicated times for the devs to come out and listen to the community and listen to everyone. I mean, we all know there's a small, obviously internal QA testers and teams like Clashpoint that have been around for a really long time, and Warpath are part of core competitive testing that probably have a more direct line to them, but seeing that they are paying attention to the beta people, so we don't is really important in the sense that this is going to be a game for everyone, right? We want it to be high caliber, interesting, competitive, probably, but it also has to be fun for everyone because no one's going to become good at a game if they try to jump in the first 10 minutes suck and the low tier is awful, which is half of the reason I don't play Dota.
That's actually the entire reason why I don't play Dota.
You're so right on that. But no, it's very true. The fact that it's actually one of those things where it's not just, you're not just listening to the players in a sense of oh, I kind of want this thing to I kind of want this here to be a thing, or I kind of want this interaction to happen. No, we're talking about balance things, things that are things that are primary mechanics in a game like this. They're actually listening to people's feedback, and they're thinking about it, and they're actively updating and going back and talking to people, just saying hey, what's your thought on if we did this, or what's your ideas of this situation that people seem to be having a problem with.
Yeah,
that's
and it's
amazing,
especially these days. You see so many games, and looking at Overwatch coming out in beta next week, you're looking at a game there
next
that,
week. It's in 3 days.
Is it? Oh,
Yeah.
EU is next week. That's why.
Yep.
I'm getting mixed up. But I mean, either way, Overwatch, I played Overwatch at PAX East, and that was already an incredibly polished game, and so odds are, like all Blizzard betas, it's gonna be a beta, which means it's a release where they don't have to take responsibility for the fact that there might be bugs.
Yeah.
Whereas like Motika, it's like they're actually treating it like this is an actual beta. Everything is up for discussion. If you don't like the way this hero works, I mean, like we saw this some with, I presumably with discussions around Roland before he got taken out of the game. Like Roland got taken out for a while, presumably because there was some amount of either internal or early alpha testers were like, no, like we don't like the way Roland plays. Like we don't like what you've done with him, and we, let's do something different. And like we aren't going to be seeing a beta program that's just lol, it's a release, but we're calling it a beta. It's like, no, this is actually we're testing.
Yeah.
We're testing the game for them, and we're telling them what we want, and they're tuning the game to fit, obviously within reason, what the community wants out of it.
Yeah, and I think realistically, even at this point, there's going to be some things that they're not going to be like, okay, yeah, no, we're not going to change that. Like massive game like systems, like I'm pretty sure that, creature summoning and how that's working out is pretty much set in stone. They're like, yeah, you're going to have to sit there and summon it, but then you have to sit there and wait if you want it to summon faster. Like that sort of stuff's not going to change anytime soon. But I like the fact, like you said, that they're talking about balance, they're talking about this because it does give that sense that this game is not finished, and they're 100% respecting, understanding, and just putting that out there, saying, hey, this isn't finished. We're not done with it yet, and we want your input. We want everybody's input, not just, the competitive guys or the core players in this case.
Yeah.
And this week they decided to talk about their first general topics was ranged viability on Canyon, and we kind of talked a little bit about this when we talked about our discussion on Imani balance as a whole. They're saying that particularly when discussing the zoning power of heroes like Mozu or Charnok, that there aren't enough areas for ranged heroes to shoot from, and that's easy to zone them out entirely because they have a very limited number of perches / ideal spots to shoot across the map. And personally, I'd agree with that for somebody like Imani, who gets very, very quickly kind of nerfed or kind of just zoned out and have her entire capability to put out damage slashed in half almost by being zoned out. But for people like Mozu or Charnok, and especially Vodin, when you get into the ranged heroes, the being zoned out and having limited purchase doesn't necessarily matter too much because for them, they're much more fluid, much more mobile heroes. They have the ability to move around. They have the ability to change spots on the fly.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of limitations you're talking about here when it comes to who specifically we're talking about. Because shooters, ranged heroes like Charnok, like HK, like Vodin, they're very good at a medium and sometimes even a close range kind of combat style, with Charnok's focus and everything. It's just like, yeah, there aren't a lot of perches, but sometimes it really doesn't matter depending on who you're playing. Imani, there's just a lot of they're not cuddling chat. There's a lot of cuddling. There's a lot of cluttering on the map because of the amount of foliage and the amount of rocks and perches. Foliage? I don't know. It's hard to talk today for some reason. Anyway, there's really a lot of limited visibility for her. So I'd agree with it for that. Other than that, I wouldn't really say so.
Honestly, I'm okay with Imani as the sniper being trash on Canyon. I'm okay with characters playing certain
poorly
archetypes being bad on certain maps. I think the big issue that Imani has is you look at someone like Charnok. It's Charnok also suffers from you can't play ranged fireball Charnok as well on Canyon as you can on larger maps. That's obvious. That's not, you're not going to have an option because Charnok suffers from the same. There aren't locations to be in and be ranged with him. But the problem with Imani is Charnok, you can spec into his flamethrower. You can spec into, frontline dive bomb in, explode people, Charnok.
Yeah, definitely.
But Imani doesn't really have a viable backup build besides stay really far away and snipe people for maximum damage using scope. There is no Vodin can go full support. It's not necessary that probably needs a little bit of a buff, but Vodin has options in the medium to short range. Imani really doesn't.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's just it's really hero dependent. But I mean, I agree. There aren't a lot of ledges at all to choose from. But we've already seen that ranged is already more powerful and more appealable to players anyway.
And even even specifically to Canyon, in this week's Guardians Arena that I participated in, playing with team straight out of Canyon, I think was their name. Gigantic Cootie in the chat, he said it himself, Canyon is dominated pretty heavily by proper ranged play. You know, it's one of those things that if you have it and it works for you pretty well, you could shut down or really kind of zone out an entire enemy team and change the way that they play. So honestly, I feel like saying that ranged isn't as viable on Canyon is a little bit of a misnomer within a more competitive sense.
Oh yeah.
But definitely, I guess I could see where they're coming from a less competitive sense. And they even went further to say that as HK or Amani, it's too easy for either hero to hit the enemy Guardian from behind their own Guardian, and that there's absolutely no danger or risk in securing the wound during the clash. And while I would agree with that for Amani, the ability to just kind of sit across the map on a good perch and just poke away at the enemy Guardian during clash or during a wound, I would say HK, with the new changes to his kit, getting rid of the accuracy on the left mouse upgrade, makes it harder for him to do, personally. And I'd say instead of being behind the enemy Guardian, he has to be up close and personal.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really an interesting case on behalf of all champions on Canyon, but I don't know. I would be more sympathetic to the range on Canyon is bad if we weren't in a situation where there are still range characters being played on Canyon. Like, there was a while, like, if you look at some of the earlier tournaments, like PAX East, that kind of stuff, Canyon was essentially just a death ball. Like, you balled up all of, you're seeing, like, Trip, Taito, Gnosis comps. And it's like, okay, like, what? I think, like, when we were playing at PAX South, like, one of the teams that won was running, like, Trip, Taito, Gnosis, Margrave, and, like, an HK.
Yes. Oh, my God. That team was... No, it wasn't even HK. It was Charnok and, like, 4 melees, and they were the only melees in the entire game.
Charnok was the only range. It was...
It's like, oh, my God,
and Charnok
what do we even do?
And Charnok's the least range of the range. Well, I mean, not in the sense of having the shortest range, but he has the most viable melee build of any ranged character.
Oh, yeah.
And we've definitely gotten away from that. Like, if you ask, like, a team like Clashpoint what they're running right now on Canyon, you're going to see some kind of 3-2 split ranged melee.
Yeah. Which honestly works better, because when you look at that kind of 3-2 split, you're seeing, a more tanky bruisery style like Gnosis or Margrave, plus one assassin, Wu Taido or Trip, and 2 more damagey oriented ranges, Imani, Charnok, or Vodin or Mozu, and 1 supporty style range like Vidasi or Zenobia or Sven. You're seeing this kind of a comp style that is very much balanced all the way around. And personally, I like that, because it does give this kind of sense of a meta that's finally forming for the beta society, because for a while we haven't seen that. I mean, there's been things that have been strong, but not like it decided, okay, this is kind of like the rules we want per team. Now we're kind of seeing that.
I've covered those roles in articles on ggunleash.com.
Yes.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
Log rolling.
But those kind of roles are very much becoming prevalent nowadays, and again, that kind of split is really showcasing that ranged is viable, and in fact actually significantly viable on Canyon.
Yeah, I can understand the gripes, and like I think there's like minor balance tweaks, but like looking over the notes from the round table, because like I was only there for part of it, like it was definitely a matter of, yeah, you can pick up like little bits here and there, and maybe some heroes aren't as viable as others, but I think it's in a good place. I think the game is in a good place when it comes to balance, and a lot of this is going to be minor tweaks. Like, there are some characters that probably need more work than others. I mean, obviously, like, Griselma's kind of in a weird spot, and Amani could probably use a little bit of work. But otherwise, like, I think we're getting close to a decent state of balance.
Yeah, and that was kind of even touched on a little bit in the rest of this. There are a lot of these heroes that they're saying is like, yeah, they're, pretty good balance. Like, going on in, they say Charnok was on the whole, they say it's a pretty good balance, but not so powerful to feel like, he's strong in certain situations, so not so powerful to feel overpowered. He's very good, with a team around him, But even going into that, they say the same thing, kind of like HK most feelers, that he's in a good kind of balance right now, maybe with a couple of changes in other areas, but all in all, good balance. Same with Lord Gnosis, and same really with kind of a lot of people. So I like the fact that we're moving into that sense. I like the fact that we're moving into this place where it's like, okay, the balance is pretty solid, because then that means they could spend less time on balance and more time on new heroes. And then later we can work on how to balance out these new heroes and how to balance everything within the meta. And as things, people find new gimmicks and things become stronger later on, we can, balance, in a much more fluid environment rather than let's get everything down on a solid base. Because I think we're there, personally.
We're definitely there, I think, for hero balance. I still want to see better creatures and some of the other mechanics, but ultimately having core hero balance is, I think, the baseline for a good game going forward.
I just want to point out something that just happened in chat. Iron Druid Margrave skin. Can that happen? That sounds amazing.
That could work if he was a Tessarius Garden.
Yeah, but he's already like a man just brimmed the core in thick metal armor.
We kind of have that a little bit with the leaked skin, the Knight Margrave. They just need to go a little bit more industrial with it.
Yeah. Or a little more woodsy, kind of crossover with a Vodun skin or something.
Well, that'd be going for the Druid, but I'm thinking if you're going Iron Druid, full on, straight up industrial, freaking his arm has to be having welder fire coming out of it, But back on topic.
Yeah, right? We got so far off of this, but not at the same time, not really.
Talking specifically now, going into Charnock's things, people are saying a few players feel like he's less viable choice than, say, Mozu. Say that Mozu has more escape, a little bit more powerful than, damage on its main damage point. But that Charnock's focus is stronger at level 1 than Mozu's is at, level 1, but Mozu's is stronger at level 3, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And while I'd agree that Mozu can be a more viable choice than Charnock, it, again, really all depends on your team build.
Charnock's just more utility. I mean, we saw this back at the PAX Prime games.
I disagree, but go ahead.
But I think really almost all of it is on Charnock's ult is amazing. As a tool, Mozu's ult will melt people. A level 3 Mozu ult can get a pentakill, easy. Full team extermination, one shot. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that.
Charnock's ult doesn't do that, but Charnock's ult is the kind of thing where if you have, a level 2 Charnock ult, and it's, during clash, the other team wants to come in for a wound on your Guardian, you lay that right in front of the Guardian's wound point, and it's oh, well, I guess we just can't get this wound anymore.
Yeah.
Because it will just murder people. You cannot stand it, which means he's pretty much the only character in the game that can say, no one is going to be right here. Even Zenobia's pool, you can, if you're I have a goal here, you can wade through Zenobia's slow pool.
I mean, you can. You don't want to.
It's not usually, but, if you're talking about, going in for a wound or something, I'll, if you're trying to, I'll swoop in, on top of Zenobia pool and get a kill.
It's not one of those things where I wouldn't mind standing in the middle of, with Zenobia.
I'm pretty sure if you stand in the middle of a Charnock level 1 ult, it will still kill pretty much everyone.
Yeah, it'll do a lot of damage.
It does the same amount of damage across the board, regardless of rank. The thing that it gets with rank is that it lasts longer on the ground, I think, and it also knocks up higher.
Knocks up higher, does more initial damage, and then it lasts longer.
I don't actually know if it does more initial, but I mean it could.
Yeah. Some of this, we don't have the numbers for. But,
yeah, wish we did.
Which is sad because we should. But
API, please. Motigo, please.
Yeah, Motigo plus.
Motigo.
Motigo.
Yeah.
Oh dear, Motigu, Mozu, Motigu. Anyway, going on into Mozu, actually, considering we are talking about the power of level 3 focuses and Mozu's level 3 being stronger. That is the thing. Most players agree that the focus is incredibly powerful on Mozu, and particularly level 3 focus is, people are saying the best focus in the game because of all of that. Just like you said, can hands down win any 1v3 or 1v4 or even a 1v5 with a level 3 focus. And my thing is, that wouldn't be a problem if it took longer to get. Mozu gets focused really quickly.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
Yeah, I agree with that. She used to not, but then they upped her numbers and generation a little bit, and then now now she's just really strong, even though they've nerfed other things, like the fact that you can't cast her little vortex from range, or that it's much smaller and doesn't last as long.
Honestly,
I
I
mean,
forget
like-
to use her for Vortex in a lot of situations just because
Yeah.
why am I spending the time to put down a Vortex that uses an incredibly long animation to do so when I could be spending that time charging my left mouse button and doing damage?
I think the game actually, and this is something I haven't really heard discussed before, is the game has an interesting relationship to attack speed.
Yeah.
Because one of the big things you notice is like anyone with a beam or a high attack speed attack like Mozu or like HK is really good at two things: generating focus,
Yep.
because you get a certain amount of focus per hit, and it doesn't seem like it scales well for people like Margrave that have like a much slower attack speed.
Yeah, I feel like it's you for every attack that lands, it's the same amount of focus across the board. Like it's a flat amount.
Yeah, perhaps. The other thing is stealing power. Stealing power is, as someone like Mozu, is like you can fill a bar in a heartbeat in a way that pretty much any melee character is going to have trouble doing. And I think like there's this weird relationship because like Gigantic doesn't have items, there isn't really an option to like spec for more attack speed. You know, if you are on a low attack speed character, you don't really have an option. It makes it an inherent advantage to certain characters to have a high attack speed.
But see,
Yeah.
is it generated the same? Because I feel like
I feel
Again,
like
this-
though it's
we
not.
This
Don't
is
have
something
numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
they
like a good example if that would kind of counter that argument is I feel like Taito gains focus on, or Taito or Trip gain focus on roughly the same level that Mozu does and their melee, but that because I think really just because certain heroes with much more kind of key focuses to their build will generate focus faster. Like Mozu gains a lot out of her focus. Taito and Trip gain a lot out of their focus, and really so does everybody. But there are some that are less, key to who they are as a hero. Like say Vidasi, that invulnerability just kind of seems like it's we don't know what to give her as a focus. Let's throw that in there. Or Vodin doesn't need his focus to do his job, but it just gives him something else he can do.
it is very
Yeah.
strong though if you land a good
Oh yeah,
natural
and
roots.
I think going back to the issues with Mozu's focus, that generation is definitely one thing, but again, it's just a huge amount of damage in a very little amount of time with absolutely no counterplay. That's the
Yeah.
big deal. The only
Yeah,
counterplay to
that's-
Mozu's focus is try and kill her before it's done, or try and CC her, which
Or
is
get
difficult,
away.
or get away. All of
Yeah.
which is very difficult to do. You know,
because it happens so quickly with hardly any cast animation, no travel time. It's like it's just there, and there's not really anything you could do, because by the time you actually find a wall to like actually get behind, you're probably already almost dead or dead. And then there's another point that was written on this chart here that says the Nigh Invulnerable upgrade that she has. During the cast animation of her focus, she takes 90%
less damage. Yeah, and that's
And
something
that's-
that just for me as
Wow.
a player of Mozu, yeah, it's like
wow.
I don't even care about using level 1 focuses at that point if it makes me live longer. If I live a little bit longer and give me the ability to teleport out because I don't have it and maybe it's on cooldown and now it's off cooldown because I use this, whatever. That build alone is worth it 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we continually see like little things, stuff like that where there are balanced things that are done in one place that don't take into account like cross hero abilities. So stuff like Mozo having a channeled focus, it wasn't a problem because almost no one else has a channeled focus, so the you're invulnerable during your focus didn't really matter until we got to somebody with a channeled focus.
Yeah.
Same with stuff like making Amani's sniper shots crits was a good idea until there was an 80% crit damage reduction build. And then that made her worthless for like a while.
Yeah.
I've always felt like every hero should have an upgrade that's like, for the focus specifically. I feel like there should be an upgrade that's kind of like general. Like there's things like Resurgence or Nigh Invulnerable that kind of
Yeah.
a few people have across the board, and then there are some upgrades for some heroes that are very specific to the hero. Like Margrave's Ground and Pound has an upgrade that gives him bonus armor based on how many he hit. Voden's Focus breaks armor based on rank, like the amount of armor broken based on rank. Vadasi heals herself while she's invulnerable. You know, those kind of things. I feel like there should be one upgrade that's specific for that hero only, and then kind of a general one just to be like, this is an option just in case. Like resurgence for resetting cooldowns.
Honestly, I think they should all be unique to the hero. I mean, like, it almost seems kind of, I mean, lazy is the wrong word, but most people's focuses already don't feel flashy or interesting. Like, this is a problem like I ran into when I was casting the tournament at PAX Prime. They're like, the running joke is like we were constantly yelling, "Oh, flame on!" because that's the only focus that's interesting. Like, it's also the only focus you really notice. Like, Margrave's Ground and Pound is pretty much the only other focus that you really notice when someone's using. Because most other people, like, for the longest time, like, I like never even noticed I was using Zenobia's Focus because it has like no particles.
Yeah.
It just kind of does something. And so like I could never tell if I'd actually cast it and hit anyone. And so like same with a lot of other people. Like a lot of people just have focuses that are like, they're gone.
Yeah,
like,
or they're just one-time uses. Like, good example, Imani, you know, it's boom, it's happened, and you're like, wait, was that a focus or was that just a regular shot?
And like if you're watching the game, like even if you're going against her, like, if she misses that, like, no one will ever notice except for the Imani player. Like, there's a good chance that Imani, like, I don't think I've ever noticed getting focused by an Imani. Like, I don't think I could ever speak to it. Like, outside of Imani, me playing Imani, I don't think I've ever even seen an Imani user focus.
Yeah. But you're correct. There's only a few that really like can be noticed in time before it's already ended. Like even Margrave, like cool. You notice a knock-up. Like, you notice the knock-up, but for the most part, it's just like, oh, they got knocked up. Yay. Yeah. And then, like, Gnosis, it's like, spears come from the ground, and then they're gone a half second later.
Yeah. Also, I like that that's still called Labyrinth, even though it no longer has the Labyrinth effect on it.
It has nothing to do with any kind of Labyrinth. But, I mean, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's... It's a hype gap. It's a problem, because, like, you're using your most powerful ability should feel cool and flashy and awesome, and it doesn't. Yeah. Like, a lot of them feel cool to use, but they don't look amazing. Like, to call back, like, to an experience, like, when I was playing Overwatch back at PAX East, like, I got in a game, and I can't even remember the character. It's the, like, archer guy. Like,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, like, it's like Hanzo or Hinzo or something.
Hanzo!
Yeah. His, like, ult ability... fires this enormous triple dragon thing that like swirls the air, and like literally I'm like playing in like a voice comm with like 6 other people, and the one from the other team like fires it at our team, and literally I heard like 4 people on the voice chat go, "Holy shit, what was that? Like, what just happened? Like, what?" And it was like the most like adrenaline filled hype moment I've ever had playing a game like over the last year.
Yeah.
And it's just, and like, none of the gigantic focuses feel like that. None of them feel like you're doing something really flashy and cool. They're utility. It's like, I guess I'll fire it over there because that's the best place to use it.
But let's give Motiga a little slack for a second, because you're comparing a Motiga game to a Blizzard game. I mean, of course, they're going to have a lot more time, and they have a lot more...
Or more accurately,
they have more computer generation and much more stuff to work with.
It's just that they have more things that they've spent more time on the actual product itself, and that the things are still down and packed. I would say that there are definitely certain heroes who I feel like the particles aren't 100% complete, like Zenobia. You know, her focus does not feel like it has any particles at all, because it doesn't.
It doesn't.
I think it does now. I think it has like a very because like I remember casting it. I think like in the beta like a couple weeks ago and being like, oh hey, I can actually tell who I hit with this now.
Yeah,
like, I think it like puts like a glowy thing on them or something.
Yeah, it should be something that's just more noticeable. Like that's the argument that we're having right now. It's just there's so many things, and I think it's the problem with, because of the fact that focuses are also spent for adult creatures, which are kind of integral to the game right now. So it's like they want there to be a balance between the point of like, I should use this because it does a ton of damage and it looks really cool, versus I should kind of use this to upgrade our creatures and generate power faster because that's how you win the game.
Yeah.
So, like,
I mean,
it really depends on what, like, like, there needs to be something that needs to be balanced between, because
yeah, there needs to be this strange balance there, because otherwise it's just kind of pointless.
yeah.
But speaking of animations, going even back to the roundtable, one of the big things that they said was for Uncle Sven, his animations are amazing. Because they are. His animations are freaking awesome.
Except for his
100%.
focus, which you can't see. Which is,
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Can you see it?
Yeah, he actually,
like,
they throw that, the flask, they throw a flask, and then it has this big splooge all over the ground. Like, it is
Did
great.
you really just
Splooge, not spooge. God, where is your mind?
No, like, you still said splooge. Like, what the
Yes,
fuck?
it is a great sploosh all over the ground. And but there is one thing that people said is that for some players it can feel difficult to aim. But honestly, I don't feel like that's a problem with the focus. That's just a problem of people need more time to get used to the animation, or maybe the animation needs to be a little bit more noticeable. But it really is one of those things that it's just like, take a little bit more time, get used to it.
I think it's also the flask for it is like, I think it feels like it has more gravity. Like when you look at like his fire flask, you can throw it like massive arcs. Whereas like for the longest time, I didn't even realize his focus had range.
It was
like,
just
I thought it was just because like 90% of the times when I fired it, it just went right in front of me. You didn't even see the particle, and it just like hit people right around me. So I was like, oh, it's centered on me. Okay.
I like
then,
that,
finally,
I like that it
time,
bounces too. It's a giant.
Sometimes.
No, I feel like I play Sven a lot. I feel like it always bounces. But anyway.
Oh, they might have changed that then.
Like, it's this giant ball full of like this gold shiny elixir, and then just boing, and then
goop,
and it explodes. Like,
it's
what?
goop. Yep. And then in addition to that, they feel that when they can land it, the players feel like the focus is really strong, but also kind of buggy. Anybody else knows? They're saying the Motiga model will linger even after the effects of the focus have faded, and the Motiga model will trigger, but players will still be able to use their normal skills.
I want to say something so bad, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Actually, I am going to.
Oh, God.
This has been a problem for, like, ever.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, no,
when people get hit by the Chaos Quaff, they transform in Motigas, and they stay like that for, like a 75-25% chance that it will happen.
Yeah, I'm pretty
sure
that
they're
happened.
super buggy. It's always been like that, and I love how it's getting addressed now. Like, what?
Yeah.
I think that happened.
Please.
I think that happened to me when I was playing Sven at PAX Out. Like, I'm pretty sure I hit during one of our games. I hit my focus at one point, and like the entire rest of the team was like Motigas until they died.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, okay, now.
I guess that's fine.
Happening.
Hypernar, it's not one of those things where they stay as Motigas and like they can't attack or anything. They just stay as Motigas, and you can't tell like what abilities they're using.
And their hitbox
changes.
changes. Yeah,
they're just a creature, and they're kind of standing like, like with their arms like really close like this because they're little dinosaurs, and then they just kind of slide across the ground. Like they don't have any movement animation whatsoever.
Yeah,
and like that's been an issue forever.
Yeah, it really has. And the interesting thing about it all, it's just that it still has yet to be fixed, even though we've known is a problem and have reported as a problem for how long? Probably just because it's not as huge of a deal in game all the time. Well, nowadays it doesn't stay as long that they'll stay as Motigas. It's not like, oh yeah, we're gonna walk around until we die as Motigas. Now it's just like, okay, maybe for a couple half seconds. But honestly, being just completely honest, it doesn't really matter 100%. Like, if they stay a Motiga for a little bit longer or not, because of the strength of the Chaos Quaff is that if you land it in a good situation, those people are most likely dead.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Going into the next little bits with Uncle Sven, they're saying his Fire Flask slow roasted upgrade is that the weak burn on his main attack is just too strong, as regen denial, and I kind of agree with that, and that's kind of something that I feel like with a lot of just people who have, oh, you can make this burn, or you can add a poison to this, like Wu has this, other things like this and whatnot, but I feel like it's just too strong.
It's the same thing with the upgrade on Voden that has for longer poison duration, and then like the ability to spread, like contagion, to spread it to others. It lasts forever.
Yeah.
And like that's it's not. She was having issues.
Yeah, I'm having intruders.
Intruder alert!
But
And
like,
she's not understanding "go away" as like a thing meaning "go away."
Are we talking about your dog or your sister?
Sister.
his sister. He doesn't have a dog. I have a dog.
Arf, wolf, bark.
Jeez, Parrot, get with it. But it's one of those things that it lasts 9 seconds.
Yeah.
And then the fact that even after the damage goes away, it still takes a good 5 seconds just for generation to start. And generation's already super slow regardless. It's like one of those things. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it makes, like, it kind of opens the ability for more, like, cleansing upgrades for your heroes. Because there's a surprising lot of heroes that actually have AoE cleanse ability upgrades that I discovered when I took a look at everything.
Yeah, but here's like the problem that I have with it is that those builds that have those cleanses just do not feel anywhere near as viable as the opposite builds. Like for Sven, yes, I feel like he's one of the few people where the cleanse is 100% viable. But
Sven
for like
Aisling.
Voden, Aisling, but for people like Voden, for people like Vidasi who does have the cleanse, there are just builds where it's better not to do it. And go with other directions.
It's because for Voden specifically, you're sacrificing super jump, and like
no, you should never do that.
You can't do that.
And it also kind of
Sven has it.
Yeah, he has that super jump. But I think the thing is that with heroes like Voden is a great example. That cleanse means that you're going to have to build and play Voden in a way that he's just not optimal. Like going back to your article on GGU, they make the change for support, adding Voden in there, and I was looking at that, I'm like, but you would never do that as Voden because he's just nowhere near as strong in a
I do it all the time. I win games. That's like my best Voden build. I love it.
And I guess maybe that plays a little bit to the cool, one of those facts where it's like, you can build however you want and still be viable as long as it fits your play style and as long as you have a team that kind of recognizes that. But, going into a competitive sense, because obviously you kind of have to balance a little bit towards the competitive field or else it's never going to happen. It's just never going to be viable in a competitive field because there are people who just do it better.
Yeah.
And going back to the main issue with these dots, is like people who do have these weak, burns, or good example, Voden has the bleed on his left mouse button that lasts a while, but does 5 damage per tick. It's like almost nothing,
But it's just the fact that it's there.
Yeah, those stop regeneration, passive regeneration, and that in and of itself is a huge issue to me because those people that don't necessarily build around their dots like Charnok would or even Voden would get this ability to just completely lock down someone's passive health regeneration, and that's a massive problem because now you're just keeping them out of the fight for 9 seconds longer.
Yeah.
That is a big pain in the ass because for somebody on your team, like you see this one person is now down to lower health, they have to leave the fight, and you're down to at least 4 people having to be able to group up and be a part of a fight, and then as they're running away, get hit by it again. Now you have to wait even longer until they're back in. That just gives you the enemy team the ability to just go ahead and say, oh, hey, look, we put this person out of the fight, or if they're going to be in the fight, it's easy to focus and bring them down, so now we could go ahead and push in this objective, and that's a problem.
Maybe what they should try to do is figure out how to code it like
being able to regen even if you have a dot on you.
Yeah, you should only stay out of regeneration if you're getting hit by direct damage,
or if you are in direct combat.
Yeah, you can argue that a damage over time obviously is direct damage because you're taking damage, but it's
I'm
if
not
you're
being smacked by something.
Yeah, if you're not in the middle of a fight, if you're not actively being shot at or punched in the fucking face, like you should be able to regenerate your health back because it's an action-based game, and like you don't want to be just staying there, just like, okay, I guess I'm waiting for everything to come back now. Like that's not fun. It's just a complete denial of everything that is supposed to be a fast-paced game.
Yep. I'm going to act as moderator real quick. Do we have anything else to say on our roundtable discussion before we move on?
Yeah, just one real quick thing.
Sure.
I think, speaking of like multiple builds and vote and support and that kind of thing, I'm perfectly fine with high tier play having one viable build per hero. Obviously, optimally, we would want to have multiple ones, but I'm okay with something where like people like Wolfie can be like, yeah, I got, I can play vote and support and I enjoy it and I win games with it. And, like, you go ask someone that plays, someone like Superior that plays vote and regularly, and they're like, I vote and support, ha, ha, ha. That's a laugh.
Or Equinox, or anybody, really.
Yeah, like, I'm fine with having, off builds, because that works. Like, that's fun. Like, I'm having things that are just good enough to be fun to play for someone at, like, not professional tier. That's totally cool. Like, but I would like to make sure that all heroes have at least some backup build that is moderately viable, just for the purposes of having it be an interesting game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think like you see that a lot in like Dota and League, where you've got like flex pick people. Like you've got like in League, like you got Shen, where you can play Shen as a support or a top laner. Like you can build him either way.
As a jungler.
Yeah, and he works well either way, and I think that keeps the game interesting, and it makes your champion pool and your hero pool much larger from a game design perspective. Like Motiga won't have to make as many supports if half of its DPSers can ult as a support.
Yeah, and that's something that I do like, being totally honest. I agree with you. I like that. And I will agree that I'm fine with them having maybe one viable build competitively, but I'd like it to be something where it's like, it doesn't have to be one. Like, you can do things as long as you change your strategy as a team. But we kind of do have that as it stands right now anyway, so we'll see how it develops in the future, though, as more heroes get put in and as a more solid meta kind of gets formed. We'll see how things evolve.
Yeah.
But going on into our next topic, we were talking about some of these cool little leaked things from the next patch or future patches. They're talking about Motiga's post. It was actually Evan on the forums posting some quick little things that we're working on that they are working on over at the Motigan offices about the next patch. One of the big things was stamina changes. Something they're kind of working around with is the cost of sprinting when out of combat has been reduced significantly, about 30 to 50%, they're saying, depending on your hero, and at the rate in which you regenerate stamina out of combat has also been increased significantly. Again, that 30 to 50%, depending on your hero, saying that people saying that stamina outside of combat being used so much means that you have to basically spend longer amounts of time waiting to get into combat and waiting to get with your team because you have to regenerate that stamina before you get there. And specifically, it was when you're entering the battlefield from your airship, you have to sprint to the middle of the field to get where you're going, and now you're out of stamina and weaker going into your next engage. I like this. I really do. I like the changes to it, and I think that's going to make gameplay a little bit more a little bit more fluid, a little bit faster, and in turn, we'll see quicker games.
My one worry about that is now that we have power orbs, I see this being a problem. Well, I see out of combat stamina regen being a problem for two things. Power orb collection, especially during Clash, you're going to have people it's going to be much harder to keep people down while they're running around picking up power orbs.
Yeah.
And backcapping is going to become way easier.
Thank you.
Because especially on larger maps, it's going to be, because the issue is, if you're fighting in the middle of the map, and even on somewhere like Hidden, if you're fighting in the middle of the map and it's like, oh man, somebody's backcapping us, you're already in combat because you've been throwing out, abilities towards the middle of the map, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, we got to get all the way back to our back points because there's a trip back there killing them. You're going to have no stamina regen because you're coming out of combat, whereas trip's already going to be in your back lines. It's only going to make it even harder to stop backcapping.
Yeah, and with a larger map, it's already so easy just to stay out of combat because there's a lot of places to hide. Like, I'm not afraid to say we've played on old Mistforge before. Like, we can't not say that. It's a thing. We've done that. It's like there's a lot of places to hide on that map, like, if you know where you're going and you know how to trek it properly. Like, and the fact that you can have faster stamina regeneration and less stamina usage while out of combat, like, that's just a deadly combination. And then like on this page it says that it depends on your hero. Like, who gets more stamina regeneration?
I'm hoping people like Margrave or people that have lower stamina regeneration from the get-go will have that longer thing. And they even say later on, to kind of address the issue of backcapping, they are addressing that in the same leak, and we'll get to that when we get there. But there is one more thing that they said about stamina that should kind of be interesting for you guys, and definitely for me, is that as long as you still have enough stamina to dodge completely, you can now dodge through enemies. So if an enemy's attacking you, an enemy's body blocking you, and you've regenerated enough stamina to go through them, dodge through them and run out of it. Personally, I like it, and I like the fact that they're saying, you know, we'll see how you guys deal with that, you know, experiment with it, see what you like, see what you don't like, because again, all of this is still very much up in the air. None of this is set in stone, but I like the idea of it.
See, now, is it just through enemies, or is it through units in general?
It just says dodge through enemies. I'm hoping it means through all heroes in general, because not being able to dodge through your allies would be kind of stupid. But you never know.
I feel like that's mostly just a boon to the high tier play.
Yeah.
In the sense that I already feel like most people don't dodge at low elo. Like, dodging is already a really weird mechanic to use. And the fact that you can't dodge forward, you can only dodge back and to the side. Like, makes it so effectively dodging through people is
difficult to do.
Yeah, and because you can only dodge at, like, cardinal directions, like, you kind of have to be like, I'm gonna look this way and then look back a little bit and then dodge sideways. It's like...
And you can see, like, in high-tier level play, like, players that are higher level, you can see them already adjusting to that. Like, if you watch, you know, a Teldo stream and him playing Trip, you can see, most of the time, he's not sprinting to get out of situations. The first things he'll do is he'll turn to the side and dodge. And that's something that, like you said, it is a boon to high-level play, and I like that. I like, you know, more things that put that difference between the general public and the masters, to me, is fantastic to see. Because I don't feel like, at this stage in the game, that Gigantic has that so much. I don't feel like Gigantic has that kind of difference between, these are your average players, these are the competitive players that are the high-level, these people that play this 100 hours a week, you know, masterful players.
Yeah.
You know, and that's going to be something that I also feel like needs to be experimented with as well. It's like, you know, should they be able to do this, or should it be harder to pull off? Can it only be after they have over half of their stamina left, or is it any point when they have enough stamina? You know, things that we can work on as it goes in the future. And again, this may be completely removed because it feels too strong or broken.
Yeah.
Moving right along, they also finally...
Are we going to discuss this communication thing?
Yes. Yes. Finally saying a ping wheel is going to be added at some point. There is a picture on it, and if you are, of course, in the beta, you can go ahead and take a look at that. We have been asked not to show the picture, so, you know, ooh, mystery for all those other people. But say that there is going to be a ping wheel saying, hey,
have you
look.
seen a ping wheel in any other game? It looks like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
not even
have
gonna
you
lie.
played League or watched anyone play League or Heroes of the Storm? It looks exactly like that.
I literally don't think that there's anyone here that is not in the beta, except for maybe one, because I don't recognize his or her name.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
But, regardless, you know, something that I personally think is going to be kind of a hit or miss, though. Totally honest. You know, having that ability to ping, say, hey, fight here, or hey, run away, yes, that's useful in, like, those situations. But realistically, when I'm pinging, it's not so much of, hey, run away. It's, hey, there's somebody at our back point, let's go do something. Or, hey, can we all please get to this point right now? You know, sort of a thing. Which also kind of goes into the other changes. let me read this word for word. We've also made some changes to distinctive players who believe strongly in the 20 ping method of questionably effective and moderately aggressive or aggravating communication. I love that definition of it. I love that definition of it, and that is totally me. Let me ping 20 times on this one point so that people understand, hey, can we move over here, like, now, please? They are nerfing that, unfortunately. Pinging too many times will finally result in a temporary lockout, and continued abuse of the system will gradually increase the lockout duration before they're able to use the ping system again. And I'm like, no, 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 please no, I like that.
I'm okay with that. I
am too.
I think the one thing that's, I don't know, Gigantic is a weird system with pinging for me because the gameplay is so quick.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of pinging that you can do in something like League where there's a lot of times where you're like, hey, I'm over, stuff like, hey, my enemy has left my lane, or hey, do we all want to go over here now? Whereas like I can ping and just like wait.
Do we want to go over here now?
Yeah, like there's this like interesting, like, with like objective play, like there's a lot of like I'll ping like, hey, I'm going to Dragon, and then see if anyone else is like, yeah, I'll also join you. And there's like this, whereas like Gigantic, you have to make that decision
Just a funny phrasing. Yeah, no, you're right. It's very fast paced, and since a lot of people can move really quickly, like by the time that people actually notice the ping, that whatever situation might have already happened, or it could just possibly have changed.
And
I'm also worried about the fact that I don't know exactly how they're gonna put this in. Like, what button will they tie it to?
I'm assuming it's going to be to the current ping button, like you press and hold C, and then the ping wheel pops up. But you never know. I mean, it may be something completely different, but I'm hoping eventually that they will bring back the pinging method where you unlocked your cursor and could click on the map, because that's not right now, and that's annoying. And really annoying, especially if you're, like, dead and you need to ping on something that nobody's nearby. Like, you can't just, let me go to this person and ping that. No, if you're dead and you need to ping on something, you can't, and that's annoying. That's incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
I think you're in this weird thing where there's a lot of games that like don't have chat and just rely on pings to some extent, and that works really well for slower paced games. I think Gigantic is almost always going to require chat, like
or a voice comm of some sort,
or voice comm, which I mean we're gonna get. Like Xbox Live will bring voice comms. Period.
It has
100%.
to. Like,
yeah, like that's going to happen, and so. Which, gets to mean I get to hear what 12-year-old kids feel about my mom.
Or what other people feel about you in general.
Yeah, but I don't know. It seems like
I feel like
pings,
I missed something.
I would rather have pings than not have pings, but I don't know if it's going to solve our problems at all. Like, I feel like it's going to be like, oh, hey, somebody pinged. I wonder what that means, rather than pings being an integral part of communication for the game.
And we even see this like in current, competitive games like League of Legends is a great example because Worlds are going on right now. The pings that they use are not, integral to, communication in the sense like, hey, let's all go, over to here. That sort of communication is already being made. Pings are utilized merely as to, like, emphasize what they're already saying in the voice comm.
Or location. Because there's there's a ward here, ping.
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
I think I just saw them here, ping.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really help in Gigantic, because 90% of the time, like, they'll have either already gone really, really far away, or everyone else already saw it, so it doesn't help.
And even speaking to, like, my own experience back at PAX East when we had the competitive players game, in those voice comms, that sort of information, like, I thought I saw this person here or this person here, wasn't so much like, oh, I thought I saw. No, it was trip center, trip left, and constantly calling that out, constantly, that sort of stuff is always being called out. And again, like you said, I don't know if pings are going to be useful in that sense in this game, and whether or not pinging is even going to be kept in the long run after voice communications are around, is definitely something up to...
Guys, we have a problem.
What?
This talk show has to now be about dinosaurs, apparently.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not talking about Charnock anymore. We already did that.
We already talked about the Sven focus. We've already gone through our dinosaur allotment for the day.
Oh, you're right. Take that, Valentin.
Sorry, Valentin.
Speaking of dinosaurs, storm drakes.
Yes, talking about creature changes.
Transition.
We do have 2 new creatures that they're kind of talking about working on. Storm Drake is one of those. It's a new Drake that hits a little bit faster and harder than our current Fire Drake, which is frightening to think about. But one thing that I do agree with, and like the fact that differentiation here, is that it doesn't leave any lasting AoE. But one thing that they didn't speak to is, does it have a different passive bonus? Like right now the Drakes will rain fire down from above. What will the Storm Drake do? Will it do the same thing? Because if so, that seems weird.
I mean, there's kind of a universal thing that each creature has. Like all the bloomers heal.
Yeah.
All the services provide vision. All the Drakes rain fire.
All the Yetis
the
put up.
Summon walls. Like
All
you know,
the
there
Yetis,
has to be
Cyclops,
something.
wow.
There has to be something that everything does. That's kind of.
You might see different
with the
particles.
family.
Like I could see a
Yeah.
Storm Drake, like instead of being like a fireball from the sky, it's like a
lightning
lightning
bolt.
strike or something.
Yeah.
You know, I would be okay with that. But yeah, I think we're going to see relatively the same behavior out of each of them.
Yeah.
This goes into something that I want to see more of out of more creatures, and I'm glad we're seeing more creatures. But there's definitely the creatures right now feels like there is an optimal build. You pick your 3 optimal creatures, and we go from here. Like that doesn't feel like an option. And like creatures are the mechanic in Gigantic that is closest to like an item loadout in any other game.
Yeah.
Instead, it feels a lot like League Summoner spells, where it's just like everyone takes Flash and then one other thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like everyone takes, like, in this case, it's everyone takes Bloomers and Serbs, and then whichever is more powerful of Drakes and Yetis.
And even then, I'm seeing less and less people taking Serbs. Bloomers
Yeah.
are honestly the only thing that is being
Though,
consistent
that's Canyon.
nowadays.
That's
Yeah,
just
that is Canyon.
being tiny.
And also Yeti Cyclops being freaking broken. But that's another issue entirely. The Stone Cerberus is also going to be coming in as well, which honestly I feel like is like a meh sort of a thing. It's a tougher version of its counterparts, but it provides less vision than on your minimap. That's okay, whatever, but what else does it do? You know, is that it? Like, does it do different attack rotations?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of like meh, but at the same time, like the whole subject of this part of the post here is that the subject of backcappers never changes been made to alleviate some of the pressure on your backlines. Like something that has more armor or maybe more health. Like that's helpful when there's people that can go and counter backcap.
But I don't, honestly, that's bullshit. You like having adult creatures having adult creatures always stop backcapping. Like if you like backcapping has almost exclusively always been for like young creatures. Yeah. It's been for suppressing. Like once you get a Cerberus up, like you are probably not going to get backcapped on that unless you're like fully upgraded to adult creatures.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the most part, any adult like the difference between like a Cerberus Majoris and a Stone Cerberus is likely not going to be enough that someone's going to be like, oh, they have a Stone Cerberus, I won't be able to backcap it.
Really what it needs to be able to do is like, and they don't really even talk about this, they just say tougher, but it needs to just be more than just, hey, look, it has more health or more resistances. It needs to be able to just nearly, you know, chunk people. Half of their health gone.
They already can. Like, Drakes can already, like, if you watch people play, like, and this has been this way for a while, like, adult creatures pretty much are already unstoppable unless you have at least 2 people working on. Like, yeah, like, some people, like, you know, someone like Teldo might be able to backcap, like, one of the weaker large summons, and, like, large bloomers are an entirely different category. Adult bloomers are squishy little trees.
Well, they need to be.
But, like, most of the other, like, large Drakes, large Cyclopses, large Cerberuses are all pretty durable.
Yeah.
Like, Cerberus is being the weakest of those, but there's still, like, one person is, unless they are a really skilled player and, like, know how to dodge all their attacks, it's still going to take them, like, a minute and a half, probably, to kill it.
And the biggest change that we're noticing with all this backcapping talks and all this sort of things that they're saying is that all summoned creatures will now boast a shield that renews every time they return to their summoning circle. This addition is intended to force backcappers to commit to fights instead of just doing laps around the backline. And in addition to this, the base health of most creatures has been increased, as well as the health regeneration when they exit combat, which I think addresses the main issue that I've always had with backcapping. Is, like you said, they can just go ahead and make laps around the back line because they could just do a whole bunch of damage to one thing, and even if it isn't a kill, they can move on to the next, and that thing has half health, and that doesn't regenerate by the time they come back.
It does
Now,
not regenerate at all.
yeah, now though, with that change, I'd say they would need to, like, this is a direct effect of this, is saying they need to sit here. They need to do damage to this to be worthwhile, because otherwise, if I see them, you know, a little exclamation point on one of my guys, and then it goes away, and then it pops up somewhere else, I'm like, oh, they're just doing laps back there. Screw it, whatever. Let's go ahead and push a point rather than trying to focus on them. And then, like you said, you know, if there are adult creatures back there, that one person doing backcapping, okay, whatever. They're not going to even get through the shield before they have to leave. Let's push a point.
And the thing though is I feel like this isn't like no amount unless the shield. I think the issue with backcapping, it is either possible or it is impossible. Like there isn't really like backcapping is, I think, forever. To put it in perspective, it's like counter jungling in League. Like you are either a good enough player to counter jungle the other team or you are not. And like if you aren't good enough to backcap, then you play the game normally without it. Yeah. Like I'm not gonna shed a tear because backcapping got too hard and like now only like top tier players can do it. Like I think
can't backcap anymore.
Yeah, like I think it's a mechanic that I don't know. It on one hand I'm okay with them making summons a little tougher. I think just the creatures in general need a little bit of rework. There's a lot of weirdness to it with like creatures are really expendable right now, especially when they're young creatures.
Yeah.
Like, for the most part, you get back up, it's like, oh, okay, like, I guess I'll walk back and resummon it. They're like, they're just so, backcapping has so little impact anymore.
And the problem is that before, backcapping felt like it had too much impact and that it monopolized the game. And it's hard for anyone to say, and we kind of get to this the last time when we were talking about Azhling and Khador, where Khador felt too strong. It's hard to get into this place where we want a balance between the two because it's a sticky point. You know, having that balance between the two is very difficult to put, and it's always going to be in flux depending on who's strong and what isn't strong and all of that. So honestly, I'm fine with it being incredibly difficult for people to backcap because it should be something that's held to the higher echelon of players. It should be something that is held to that, because something that will monopolize a considerable portion of somebody's strategy shouldn't be something that can be pulled off by someone in their second game.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be something that should be done by just a single player either, especially someone who already has a lot of ability just to kind of avoid fights and just move around like Taito or Trip. You know, like, these creatures are, I've said this before, these creatures are adult creatures and they should feel like maybe miniature raid bosses because they're powerful creatures that provide very strong benefits for the enemy team.
I would agree with that more if it was
something
adults.
Yeah, no, I'm saying adults in general. Like,
oh, okay.
You know, if you have an adult creature, that's something that you should be willing to defend, and it's something that should be hard to kill because it's something that's really, really strong. You know, if you take pride in being like, yeah, I summoned this Yeti Cyclops because now it has like this huge slow field and a wall and it's really hard to kill, like, you know, that shouldn't be something that just a solitary Taito player kind of on his own
go ahead and
like
kill.
On his own just be like, okay.
Unless you like really leave them alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally onto our last topic, as we are 5 minutes past our hour. We're gonna just kind of do.
It's fine.
No, even past our hour of streaming in general of all this, of our show, we're going to go ahead and talk about really first impressions of this Datamind new hero, Beckett, the tactical shooter person.
Link this to me.
Oh, yeah.
Let
Let me put
it.
it straight in the chat for everybody. If you don't want to look at it, don't look at it. If you don't want to hear about it, you can go ahead and mute the stream a little bit. But we're just going to put our first impressions of this. Tactical shooter uses machine pistols versus cannons as their left mouse, apparently, is what I'm assuming. They have the jetpack boost as one of their things where they ran rapid boost to movement in any one direction. They can switch weapons between pistols and cannon. They can throw grenades, and I'm assuming this is the focus. It would be kind of silly if it wasn't. Is a tactical drone strike where they target an area on the ground and a series of missiles fire at that. Honestly, I like it because it kind of brings into another style of gameplay that is kind of pointed to but not necessarily represented right now, and that's the CS:GO, the shooter style, assault shooter style that we kind of games that we want more people to play from. We definitely do want more of that style, but right now all we have is a sniper or a turret.
The character seems very interesting. It's gonna really depend on like how often you can use the jetpack, like how much height and distance you can actually get with it, if it drains stamina or anything. This grenade, it's just like a standard grenade. Like, what else does it do? It just seems kind of boring. But
well, and maybe a little bit of that's just because, again, it's a data mine post. There's a lot of information that either A, hasn't been built yet, or B, just couldn't have been gleaned from just the files. So we'll see more of that if it ever comes to light. Again, if. And I like this, and a little bit of a caveat, we've kind of beat data mining to death, but now he's saying, this is a data mining post from Gigantic, means you should not take this information as final or true. Thank you.
That said, he's been pretty accurate so far.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, he hasn't been wrong about anything coming into... I mean, like, we saw all the new creatures at another post last week, and...
Which is gone, by the way. You can go to the site. It's not there anymore.
Oh, he got the creature post?
Yeah, I think it's because all that information was just, like, things we've seen previously. Like, all of those creatures that were in there, you know, it was stuff that they show at, like, PAX South and PAX East. We saw it already. Yeah. But getting back to Beckett, you know, yes, it's very basic. Yes, it's very simple. But honestly, it's something that I want to see more of. And, you know, our person in our chat, Ellen, being like, new Roland, yay. It's not. Yep. It really isn't, because Roland, you know, was removed, but is going to be brought back in again. He's still going to be there if we, you know, that's what they're saying. He's going to be brought back in again. But, you know, Beckett is drastically different from the original style of Roland and from what I'm assuming they want out of Roland, saying we want a little bit more this gadgetry style of play. Yeah. Beckett doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, Beckett's just got guns and explosives and missiles, apparently.
Though I see what they're saying, though. Like, we are talking about a hero who's fits kind of that Roland, like, mid to short tier ranged, it looks like, with, you know, grenade abilities, like high mobility, grappling hook, jetpack, you know, different, but still kind of, you know, fulfills that movement ability, you know, a focus that does high damage output, you know, in an AoE. Like, it does seem like it's going to fulfill the Roland slot and provide our, like, you know, 7th range DPS attack person.
But there's something else that Ellen Tepic said about Beckett. Like, it doesn't really seem like it fits the game. You know, it's
That's
just
hard
like...
to say, though, at this point, because the game is so new. It's hard to say this won't fit the game.
But it's like looking at the kit from the general standpoint right now, like, it looks like some kind of hero that belongs in Overwatch, because it's got just a bunch of guns and then...
Well, and one thing I would say that kind of differentiates her, or I'm assuming it's a her, from the skin portrait.
It does look like a her.
It does look like a her, like if you look at it. And then it says Baroness, so again, assuming it's a her.
That's true, I didn't even see that.
One thing about her is that she's very much focused towards her left mouse button. And that's really about it. She's lost one of her abilities just to switching weapons. Like, that's all that her one ability does, is switch weapons between the two. So most of what she does is focused on her left mouse button attacks. And, I mean, aside from Mozu, there really isn't another hero that just does left mouse button damage. A lot of heroes do more than just that. You know, Amani, yes, you know, stuff like that. But, again, Beckett is all about that damage, all about that stuff, and it's in a mid-tier.
I just realized this. Beckett is essentially just Amani. She's got an LMB that fires bullets. She's got a weapon switch. She's got a grenade, and she's got a movement ability. Like, the movement ability is the only thing that's different. But if you just replace the scope for a movement ability, like, they both have a grenade, they both have an auto attack that's some kind of burst fire mode, and they both have something that switches their burst fire mode to shoot slower.
Yeah, they just have different movement abilities and different focuses, and obviously she's a lot closer range because you can't really fire a cannon or pistols. Well, I mean
pistols. We're talking about voted here who can outrange Amani. Like, normally archers don't outrange people with sniper rifles.
Well, I guess, but you know, like, that's just a game thing. But like, if we think realistically, like, you know, you're not gonna fire pistols from across a canyon and just be like, I aimed it. And like it depends on how fast they shoot, because it says machine pistols, so they're like Glocks. They're not just like like
Maybe?
they're firing.
I mean,
It says machine pistols. Like it says machine pistols. I don't know. Like,
But
mean,
then,
we'll find
you know,
out.
cannon, we could, you know, say, hey, look, she's going to pull a freaking cannon out of her back and, you know, light the cannonball. Like, what do we mean by that as well? Again, this is all very much in the air, and I think that's where you were going,
You
is
made me-
that we don't
like,
know
you
what
said
it
that.
means.
You said that, and I just imagine like her
Tess?
just pulling a Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
I just imagine like her pulling out a cannon like out of her butt, and then just like getting in it, and then just launching herself at the enemy, like
That
as a
would be fun.
projectile.
I was thinking,
That'd be
there's a
that'd be really
Bloodborne.
cool.
Isn't there a Bloodborne weapon you can get that's like literally a cannon that you like have you like pull it out? Yeah.
I don't know, like,
Maybe.
I never played the game, nor did I
No.
watch anybody playing the game, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
watch people playing the game, but I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, I
But,
definitely,
mean,
I definitely don't think it's literally just going to be a Monty rehash. Like, I'm not. I don't feel like that's going to be what it is. I do think
It's going to
there's
be
a
very
lot-
similar, though.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be very similar to
it's
Amani in a lot of
it's
ways.
similar.
Yeah, and
Definitely
honestly, I
similar.
hope it's not going to be like that. But I think the big difference between the two is going to be how does it feel? How does they play? Because this seems like it's a much more mobile hero, and that in and of itself is going to be enough of a difference between Amani and this hero that, you know, I would say definitely isn't a rehash. But I'll agree with you. The abilities are very much similar, you know, in that
Yeah.
sense. But
Actually, my crazy fan theory right now, speaking of
Okay.
how she's similar to Amani, I think it's Amani's sister. Or
Oh!
cousin. I think they're related. Because they're both kind of tech gunners. Like, if you look at the skin.
But
Yeah.
look at her head. She's obviously got like fiery orange hair, like coming out of the back of her.
Well, that's
of
a
her
skin.
helmet thing.
that's
Yeah.
the skin, though. We don't know if that's going to be the base skin. Maybe
Like,
that's just they
that
dyed her
is,
hair for the
like,
skin.
Completely unsubstantiated fan theory.
Yeah, that would be awesome, though. I would agree with that. That would be freaking amazing, though.
Yeah.
But that is going to actually call it for us, unless we have any last little comments to make.
It's been
We're
a really
sitting
long
at-
time since we've had a stream, like, or a new patch, and I really want this new patch next week.
Yeah, I really
I
do want
want
this
it
new patch.
bad.
I mean,
feel
whether
like-
it's next week or the week after, because again, they are still dealing with the matchmaking bug.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll see whenever that happens. But I want it soon. I really do.
It's interesting to see that, like, beta was pretty rapid on the first couple patches. Then it's like, as soon as we started streaming, it was like, oh yeah, like now the entire world is seeing that your matchmaking system is kind of lousy. It's like, now we're taking it down to fix the matchmaking issues. Now that
And-
now that the NDA is down and people can watch you have crappy matchmaking,
Yeah.
like,
And we've had this we had this talk a lot last week. So if you
Oh,
haven't watched it, check out
we
the
did.
Saltfest. You know, it was hashtag
Oh, that
Saltfest
was-
2015.
There was so much salt.
It was
Oh my God.
great. So, but that is, however, going to call it for us. We thank you guys so much for sticking around here and watching. It was a little bit longer than we wanted, I guess, than our hour normal. But we did start a little bit late, so I guess that's a little bit of a handout to you fellas. Feel free to go ahead and follow us over at Twitch or at GG Unleashed. You can also see our Twitter handles above our heads at Noirbot or at the Noirbot. Actually, is what that is. We have at Schmoolidorf, at ToWolfman, all on Twitter. And then also feel free to check out this VOD on our YouTube channel when it gets uploaded later today. That is youtube.com/GG Unleashed. All the same place, all the same style, all the same loveliness. And I hope you guys liked the new style, the new overlay. One of the guys over at GG Unleashed decided to build us a lovely logo here, which is amazing. Freaking amazing.
yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot. Like the arrow and the
That-
gore,
all of that sort of
animation. I love
stuff.
that.
And then
That's
also feel free to follow us at follow us over at our different Twitch channels, twitch.tv/Schmoolidorf, twitch.tv/ToWolfman, Noirbot if you want to watch a blank screen.
I actually may end up streaming next weekend because New Binding of Isaac expansion.
Oh, yeah.
Snap.
It's going to be great.
The only game I will probably ever stream.
Yep. But yeah, is there anything else?
Quick shout out, we do have the Guardians Gallery
Yes!
coming up tomorrow, right?
tomorrow,
Yes.
10 p.m. Eastern. That is part of
Yeah.
the main Reddit post. If you guys want to go check out
part,
that,
part
they,
of the GG Unleashed network. It's going to be, I believe, GeekFay is hosting, right?
Yep, GeekFay is hosting. She's going to have the two special guests for the same people that did the amazing Aisling and Kador cosplay at PAX Prime.
So good.
So
like
amazing.
seeing that in person was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous of you. I love that the sword glow just.
Yeah.
Oh, it had
actually,
to.
Gorham has the sword now. It
Oh,
was
wow.
donated to Motiga, as I recall.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we
Wow.
were
awesome.
carrying it. We almost lost it at one point. Like because we were going to like our PAX is over. Like let's all hang out. And like forgot, like we almost left the sword behind and had to go back and get it. But yeah,
Amazing.
no, it now sits with the trip daggers from the original that cosplay. I think it was that PAX South or
Yeah,
PAX
no,
last year?
it was PAX Prime last year.
Yeah, so the two trip because there's a great picture
Trip and Taito.
bouncing around of the trip deck of right before the CP Synergy show match of Mango and oh damn it, I'm forgetting his name. Quick, yeah, Mango and Quick posing with the trip daggers in front of their teams because they're the two assassins for CP and Sin.
Yeah.
So great picture. So we're slowly building up an arsenal over at Motiga.
Yep, and feel free, that again, it's going to be on the same channel tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern time. Sorry, EU, if that's going to be 2 a.m. for
It
you
might
guys.
also be early for EU, depending on
Yeah,
where they are.
2 a.m. or 3 a.m. depending on what convention, time zone you're in. But thank you guys so much for watching. This has been one hell of an episode of GGU's Bull Rush. We will go ahead and see you guys next time.
Absolutely.